Good morning and welcome to this Students as Partners Scholarship session from the Student Hub Live here. And this is part of the eSTEeM Annual Conference 2019. My name's Karen Foley and I'm a lecturer here at the Open University, and I'm joined by some guests in our studio for this live interactive discussion. Now, if you've just logged on to this in real time, you should be able to see some widgets and things that you can vote on. You can tell us where you are in the country, what you're studying, at what level you're studying, and just press on the option that applies to you and fill those in. If you've got a word cloud and you have 3 options, then you do need to put 3 things in, but if you can only think of 1 or 2, that's absolutely fine. Just put a full stop so that your results will submit. You can also talk to each other in the chat and, of course, ask any questions. And bringing those to the studio today is HJ, who is on our hot desk. Good morning, HJ.
Good morning. We've got lots of people starting off in the chat, so if you are joining us in the main chat room, just say hello and introduce yourself. As always with the chat, anything goes. So any thoughts, comments or questions for our fantastic guests, we want to hear them, and I'm sure they want to hear them as well. Also be posting all the resources discussed today in our chat as well. So we're all ready and excited to go here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, HJ, and do put those questions to us. Well, we're hoping to have a great discussion this morning. I'm joined by Clem Herman, Diane Butler and Kath Brown. Now, Clem and Diane, you are part of the eSTEeM academic team, and you've just stepped away from your 2-day annual conference to come and do this interactive discussion with students. And Kath, you're the president of the Open University Students Association, here to represent the student voice, which is, of course, what we're talking about today. But I wonder if we could begin by talking about eSTEeM, and if you could give me an idea, Diane, about what it does and what it's all about.
Okay. eSTEeM is the STEMS Faculty's Scholarship and Innovation Centre. We've been around for about 8 years now, and our role is to support academics and other members of staff to fully investigate student learning. So in order to try and improve the student experience, to find to set projects in train which fully investigate aspects of learning, so students hopefully will benefit from the lessons we learn and the projects that we conduct.
Now, you've got a whole range of people involved with this, from associate lecturers, obviously students, members of the academic team, so you've got a variety of perspectives, but you work on a project basis, don't you?
That's right. So people come to us with their good ideas. Usually everything always starts with a great idea. So perhaps a member of a module team or somebody who's involved with student support come to us with a proposal about how things could be made better for students, how student learning could be improved. We scrutinise the project and we sort of bring an academic rigour to it to make sure that it's going to deliver, and then we support people to fulfil their project and to report back to the rest of the university. And usually if it's a great idea and the project works really well, it'll tell us some interesting things that we can then pass on to the rest of the university to try and make the student experience better. So this can be a whole range of different things, from assessment through to student support, through to how to teach particular concepts in STEM subjects.
And as well as those bottom-up things, you've also got a top-down way of looking at things. So you look at strategic priorities as well from the faculty, and you do that twice a year.
We do. We look at what's important at the moment for students, where issues are, where things need improving, where developments could be made. And twice a year we call for project proposals, and people align themselves with the strategic priorities that we've identified, come to us again with their ideas, and then we set them going on a whole variety of projects.
And as one would expect from STEM, you've got some frameworks as well that you work around, don't you?
Yes, we make sure that we are actually aligning the projects with things that are particularly important to students. So we set specific frameworks around where we want the scholarship projects to develop.
Now, I wanted to go around scholarship because scholarship is one of these words we've been talking about a lot here. But what does the actual scholarship of learning and teaching mean, and why is scholarship important right now?
Scholarship is fundamentally important. It means that we can learn from our students' experiences and we can improve student learning. And we now have a number of scholarship centres across all the faculties in the university. So the university is really paying attention to this particular issue and making sure that the students are more fully involved in scholarship as well.
And there's a whole university-wide scholarship plan, isn't there? Do you want to say something about that, Clem?
Shall I
Yes,
answer
I think
that one?
that's your thing.
So, as Diane said, the university is now prioritising in a formal way, the scholarship of teaching and learning right across the university. But actually, scholarship has always been sort of key to the approach that we've had at the Open University, in the sense that being able, as teachers, being able to reflect on our learning, being able to innovate and bring new technologies and new kinds of approaches to learning has been there over the 50 years that we've existed, actually. We were the first university that was in University of the Air. We then moved into other kinds of new technologies as we progressed. So what we do is to look at how we can apply new kinds of technologies into our learning, but then also evaluate those in a very robust way to make sure that they produce really effective teaching and learning. So scholarship, we apply our scholarly lens to our own practice.
Because there are a number of different ways, and you've mentioned quite a few things there, the University of the Air, and there's this whole technology aspect as well, and also this idea of practical applications, that research has got a purpose to it and that you're actually doing something and pushing something forward, and that's really what this is about, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, scholarship really is a form of research, but it's the research that we do that focuses on our teaching and learning practice. So we are, as academics and higher education professionals, interested in how effective we can be and how we can bring the best results for our students, and therefore a scholarly approach is central to that. So the university then has a number of scholarship centres. eSTEeM is in the STEM faculty, but we also have centres in the other faculties that are doing the similar kinds of things.
And as well as generating knowledge, which has a really important application, it's also about developing our practice as teachers, isn't it? And about developing that sort of personal side of things so that we can go on to produce better outputs for the students in that way. So scholarship's also important for the people doing the scholarship.
Yes, indeed. So scholarship there's really three aspects to that. First of all, and first and foremost, it's the students. We want to make sure that our products, if you like, our teaching and learning, is something that is highly effective and produces the best kind of environment for student success. Secondly, it is, as you say, it's about our own professional practice. We want to improve and continually develop our own professional knowledge and learning, especially as things change in terms of teaching opportunities using technologies. And then thirdly, it's for the Open University itself. We have a reputation as an innovator in all sorts of ways, and therefore we want to remain at the cutting edge of all of these kinds of scholarly activities. Yeah.
Well, this all sounds great, and you came on, Diane, saying we've had all of these brilliant ideas, so I'd like to hear about some of them, because you've had, since you started the first call in 2011, you've had over 130 of these projects going. So could you mention all of them? What are some of the highlights, and what are some of the things that have worked really well? Can you tell us about the projects?
Yes, I mean, we have such an enormous variety of different sorts of projects. Some ones that stand out was some prize winners from last year, where we had a team working in maths and statistics who wanted to try and find a way to make graphical material within their module more accessible to students with visual impairments. So they found a way to sonify graphs, so to turn a graph, which somebody with a visual impairment wouldn't be able to appreciate, to turn it into sound which they could hear.
Wow.
So that was a classic eSTEeM project which looked at a way of making material more accessible to students with additional requirements. We have other projects that focus on the development and practice of associate lecturers that help them improve their practice. We have others that focus on assessment or on tutorial delivery. So all aspects of the student experience are investigated through different scholarship projects, which try and unpack issues and problems and then improve our practice to make things better for our students.
Those early start ones were really good, I thought,
Absolutely,
weren't they?
yes. I mean, that was another classic case, again, in various modules across the faculty, but starting in maths and statistics as well, where module teams offered students, particularly who were studying more than one module at the same time, the opportunity to start one of their modules 3 or 4 months early, so they could get ahead. That would reduce the difficulties of trying to study concurrent modules. That was tried out for a couple of years now, and students have found this to be a really beneficial practice that really helps them manage their study time.
So can you tell us some of the feedback about that one then?
Amazing feedback from students who took up the opportunity to start early. They found that they could plan their study better. They could start in the summer months where they perhaps weren't quite so busy or they had some time. They could start one module, have early access to the material, get ahead. So by the time the second module that they were studying started in October, they were already 2 or 3 months ahead of the calendar with the previous module.
They got to know each other as well, didn't they?
They did,
Some
that's
of my
right.
friends were doing S294, which had an early start, and they really appreciated that they could get to know some of the tutors and some of the fellow students before on started.
So that was a classic case of one module trying something under the auspices of an eSTEeM project, evaluating it rigorously, checking that there were no deleterious effects, and that for the students it was a good option, and then it being rolled out to other modules in the faculty where we realised that there might be issues where students were studying that module alongside others, and it would be a difficult module and it needed more time.
And aside from the sort of study intensity issue that having 2 modules together can bring, did something like this lower stress for students who took part in it so that they were able to sort of approach things a bit more?
Yes,
yeah.
I think that's definitely a case, isn't it? It was just that feeling of perhaps being in more control, having, when the students were available to study, they could get on and study if they wanted to, but it wasn't compulsory. Lots of students joined the module at the normal time and studied it at the normal rate without any difficulty. It just provided that little bit more flexibility and control for the students.
I think for a lot of us, obviously as a part-time student, you're very aware that that's conflicting with other aspects of your life, and for a lot of us, being able to get a little bit of a cushion so that you can get ahead means that you feel more relaxed about the whole thing, and this was really providing a cushion on a grand scale, so to speak.
That's right. That's right. So that was a very simple project. There are others that look at particular applications. So, for example, we use something called Open Studio, which is an application that's widely used across STEM. And we've had a sequence of projects that have really rigorously evaluated the use of that particular tool and looked at ways in which it's used across different modules in the faculty. And that was a recent prize winner this time, wasn't it?
Yesterday, we have, as part of our conference, we have an annual prize for the Scholarship Project of the Year. So the prize winner, as Diane said, in one of our categories, was a project looking at Open Studio and the different uses across different modules. So Open Studio is a tool where and many students will have experienced on different modules where they can upload, for example, photos or other assets. It's been used in design courses, for example, where people have been able to upload kind of visual projects that they've been working on. And we looked at how students have responded to that across all sorts of different modules. So that was a very interesting project, and that got the prize yesterday.
And what was the prize?
Oh, they got a lovely plaque that they can put up and nice certificates. So, yes, I think they were all very, very chuffed to receive that. Yeah.
And how lovely to do that at the conference as well. A very important thing to
I wanted to
recognise.
mention another one, because another prize-winning project yesterday was the one on labcasts. And that was, so this was one where one of the courses included labcasts, which is a live events in the evenings.
People have been loving the labcasts in the chat.
Yes, that's right. And the project itself was looking at how do students feel about that, and how has that enhanced their learning. And they found that over 2/3 of the student on this particular module felt much more engaged with the student team, with the module team, and with the university itself, rather than feeling kind of remote. And I think that's a really important finding, actually, how we bring students to feel part of the university by using these kinds of things.
Generating that sort of academic community is so important, and it was lovely reading the results of that project, because anecdotally I'd heard that from so many students that it made a real difference. It was lovely to see that it was working everywhere like that.
Yeah,
It's a good one.
Now, it strikes me that these ideas, I mean, you've mentioned the two of the ones that Karen Vines and Chris Hughes was the one that you started talking about the novel approaches to hearing numerical data. And then, of course, there was the Carol Calvert's one, which was about the advanced starting modules. Those ideas, I mean, they have such a massive impact, but they are ideas you can imagine somebody sitting there going, I wonder what if we did this? It's all about starting with those good ideas, which returns to this point you initially mentioned about how many ideas there were in the first place. And I guess it's that point about having this whole community together, associate lecturers, students, and everybody combining, thinking, how can we make this all better? And then coming up with a way of researching it.
That's it, exactly. I mean, we need to listen to all those voices to make sure that everybody gets an equal say to say where the issues are in teaching and learning. The associate lecturers are particularly important because they're obviously the front line. They're the people who interact with our students, on the most regular basis, and they come to us with really interesting ideas. We've recently launched a call for projects for associate lecturers so they can lead their own scholarship projects supported by eSTEeM. So we're trying to bring them much more to the front and centre of our eSTEeM activities.
But the student voice is so important because this is one thing, and this is what we're here to talk about today, which is often, at such a different level. But sometimes students might think, well, I can't come up with an idea of a comparative use of Open Studio or something. But like you say, it's that early start. That's an idea that is something that could be very, very practical and then work through. So tell us about the student voice and why that's so important and what areas you're really missing out on that the student voice addresses.
I think that the people that we work with in the faculty and in our student support team, we're all really expert at delivering teaching. We're not really expert at being students anymore. It's been a while. So we really need to learn from our students where the problems are firsthand, where the issues are, and allow them to help us set the strategic priorities for projects. So we make sure that they're fully included in the whole process and that it's not just us thinking, well, that sounds like a nice idea, let's research that. Kath and I recently asked a small group of students last week what would be their priorities for scholarship projects, and within about 5 minutes we had a list, huge long list, some of the things we were doing already, but there were some really new things, some things that were really innovative and that we hadn't thought of. So getting the student voice, those people who are experts in studying at a distance in our institution, that was really, really fundamental.
Could be a future prize winner there.
It could be. It'd be nice to have a student prize, wouldn't it, going forward? Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing that we're looking, the student voice is hearing the ideas, but there's also the next stage, which we're really interested in, is getting students as partners in our projects and getting students more actively involved. I mean, you might want to say something about that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is a really exciting opportunity for students to get involved as co-researchers, and we've been looking at ways they can do that from a small scale such as sense checking a questionnaire. Having student facilitators of focus groups could be really good because obviously students will feel rather differently about being open with other students. And so we've been working out a kind of a ladder of engagement, and on a personal basis I'm really excited that I'm involved in a couple of the ones that we're starting this year.
And you work in a lot of various roles, Kath. What are some of the benefits that you get from participating in some of these things, and why do you think other students should get involved?
I think there are many reasons other students should get involved. Firstly, obviously, there's the personal development aspect, that the chance to actually be involved in something like this is something that they might well find very fulfilling, very satisfying, and indeed, in many cases, it's something they can put on their CV as something they've done as well as their studies. I think understanding that the teaching and learning is something that is actually researched and thought about so deeply is very helpful for students to understand that it's not just arbitrary that someone's just decided to do it like that, to understand that there is a process of continuing improvement. And obviously, as Diane was just saying, to feed in their unique perspective. The point is that the student is, as we said, an expert in being a student, so that they can feed that in. I mean, we're really happy that in eSTEeM we've been moving over the last few years to increasing student involvement, haven't we? I joined as a student on the advisory group back in December 2017, something like that. And we've recently just formed a student reference panel, and we've got a student-facing website. And we're looking at having a student-facing event as well, aren't we? That's
right. We want to have a mini version of the conference that's just taking place at the moment, but online in Adobe Connect, so students can listen to some of the projects that have been reporting at this conference, find out how they can get further involved. And we're really looking, as Kath says, for people who don't just want to listen to what we're doing, they want to come and get involved as well, so they want to support the work that we do. I think it's really fundamental that we include people, and I think they can add enormous value to projects. We've just inducted some new projects which are really, we've made a focus that students should be included on the team of people. And we've got a number of really interesting projects where we're using students who've successfully completed modules to advise on how new assessments are written for the next set, next presentation of the module. So really using students' expertise to help other students who come after them on the module that they've just completed.
So there's a whole different range of elements that you're wanting to include. You want, on one hand, some of the ideas, on another hand, some of those students to actually take forward those ideas in addition with other people.
Absolutely.
But also there's this aspect of listening and just asking students to come along and maybe come to these Adobe Connect sessions and say what they think about certain things. So students can get involved without necessarily having that big idea or an agenda. It's all about just being there and having some sense of feeding into something, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. It's just contributing thoughts and ideas about the things that are already in train, making suggestions. They don't have to have a huge idea for a massive project at all. That's difficult enough for lots of us to come up with.
Yeah.
So, but within certain areas of the curriculum that students do become expert in, they will have lots to add to any scholarship project that we set going. So we would really value that.
I think another thing as well is that obviously OU students are a very varied bunch, and although obviously for most cases our students will be recruited for their expertise in being students, we have people who have a whole lot of other professional skills. We may have someone, part of their day job is doing research possibly, or writing questionnaires or facilitating focus groups, and it would be, although they're going to be very much in the minority, we want to leave it open to using those sorts of skills as well, don't we?
Yeah. And there's this aspect of reflection that I think is very useful. I mean, Kath, you say, you know, the benefits are, you know, contributing and being involved and finding out more and I guess having a nose around and meeting some of the academic team, which
Having a nose around's a big one.
Oh, yes. It's all really great. But there is also this thing of coming along and often I find when I'm participating in research, sometimes I think, oh, I don't really have the time to do that. But when I'm there, I often think these questions are really promoting thinking about something maybe I haven't thought about before, and they, you know, they really have a value at the end of it to think, how am I behaving as a learner? What might I do differently? And there's that element of participating in research and being involved that can allow you that space to think about yourself as a learner in addition to feeding into that community.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as Kath said, you know, there's the benefits of participating are also it's also developmental.
Yeah.
So you learn skills, you learn new things. It's opening up the possibility of possible research that some students might want to move into, you know, as they progress in their academic
And very
life.
often students will have to do a research project of some sort, and so it's very useful to see how they've been briefed, how they've been debriefed, and you know, all of those considerations that they're then subject to as a participant in that research can then have a value in terms of their own learning.
Yes, exactly. So it's a sort of on-the-job experience that they can then draw on for future research projects.
Now, you'd mentioned the Adobe Connect rooms, but there's also a website and space students can go to because they're going to want to find out more about some of this. So can you talk us through how they connect?
Okay, so it's a eSTEeM and community website. We call it eSTEeM and Co. And it's a typical module type website. So we have forums, we have an Adobe Connect room, we have some resources and links through to lots of video. We have a YouTube channel which has videos of lots of our successful projects from the past. So the students can go look at those videos and see the sort of work we've done and get a real flavour for the sorts of things that eSTEeM does. There's a forum, so we'd always like to see people contributing on the forum. There's some threads that people can join in, set up by the student reference panel who Kath mentioned we've just started working with. So that's a space for people to come with their ideas, just to find out more about the work of eSTEeM and to sort of fully understand how seriously the STEM faculty takes teaching and learning and making teaching and learning as best as we possibly can for our students.
And the links have gone in the chat for that, so if you'd like to click on those, HJ's put them in so you can find out more. Okay, you also, as part of the conference today, you've mentioned that you're having a parallel conference for students, but as part of today's conference, you also have a Students as Partners workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's quite exciting. We should be starting in an hour or
Rush,
so.
rush, rush.
Yes, we'll be rushing over there. We've got a guest facilitator who's an expert in doing work on students as partners globally. He's run all sorts of workshops in Australia and Canada and so on. So we're very excited. So we're sort of leaving it in his hands as to run how this is going to run. But the idea is that we're going to be generating lots of ideas. We've got quite a number of students who are attending that. And what we want to do is just explore whatever ideas come forward as to what are the issues that we must be considering as we grow this bit of our work. What are the ways we can really engage with students in a meaningful way rather than just sort of superficial? What are the ways that we can actually make some of those ideas happen in a real sort of dynamic way? So we're just waiting to see what's going to come out of this particular workshop. Yeah.
No, that will be great. And Professor McKeely's certainly got a lot to add on that. And it's a big buzzword, this whole idea of students as partners, coupled with all of these power dynamics as well. But it sounds as if, there are various ways to really integrate students, both in terms of the concepts as well as the pushing those through into actual research projects here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously as the Open University, we have challenges because our students are dispersed everywhere across the country and wider. So we have different challenges to, let's say, a campus university where a lot of these initiatives are taking place. So I think it's quite exciting for us to be exploring this. And actually, I think Mick's very excited as well because it's one of the first universities, distance universities, that's really trying to tackle this head on. So,
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And let's just finish then for people watching on the catch-up again with the ways that people can get in contact. So Diane, in addition to the website that you've talked about, students can also email if they'd like to find out more.
Yes, we have an email address which is eSTEeM.co.uk. Drop us a line, come and talk to us through the email, tell us raise any issues that you have with us. If you're interested in getting further involved, drop us an email and we will get back in touch with you.
Brilliant. So that email, if you're interested in finding out more, is eSTEeM@open.ac.uk. Well, Clem, Diane and Kath, thank you so much. That's been a really interesting session. Are there any things that we haven't included that you'd like to include before we go?
Scholarship and teaching and learning is fascinating. Get involved, guys.
Says it all.
Brilliant. Well, I hope the rest of the conference goes as well as it already has been, and I'm sure people are going to really look forward to finding out more. So do check out the website, do get involved. As we've been talking about, there are so many benefits to participating, and of course the Open University really appreciate and value the student voice. It adds so much insight to our teaching, which we're constantly trying to improve and develop, and a great opportunity to get involved for you also, as Kath has mentioned. So you can find out more on the website, and that just leaves me to thank our guests for participating and wish you all the best for the rest of the eSTEeM conference this year. Thank you all for watching today. See you at another event soon. Bye for now.